What's up, everybody? You're very welcome along to the Mundo Sporto Premier League prediction show. Myself and Jack Gill going to run through the games this weekend. Firstly, Jack, how great is it, mate, to have real football back?
It is, mate. Just before the international break, I was sort of saying, well, it's the first international break that I was kind of a bit excited for. I was a bit eager for because I felt that Liverpool and our players, we kind of needed it with the way we were playing. But with that being said, the last couple of results before the international break was something to give us a bit of a high after a long period where we'd not had that. So, last weekend, it made me feel shit that Liverpool hadn't ruined my weekend, and I wasn't used to that. It was a weird situation, but yeah, it actually came at the perfect time for me because I could just concentrate on uni work for a couple of weeks. But I'm just so glad to have it back, and games are going to come thick and fast for the next couple of weeks.
It was great to see that the powerhouses of world football are now Luxembourg and North Macedonia. That did come as a shock to me during the international break. I mean, wow, whatever about Ireland, because we're not great at the minute, but whatever, like that North Macedonia result against Germany, mate, that was nuts.
Yeah, Germany weren't too great yesterday, were they? We've seen that miss from Timo Werner. And yeah, as you say, it's nuts. It just shows that, like in a lot of club situations in world football at the moment, you're getting a lot of these minnow teams, as they call them, that are producing shot results, and maybe big sides are taking their foots off the gas in games like that.
Right, let's have a look at the first game, Jack, this weekend. Chelsea taking on West Brom. I'll give you first dibs on this one.
I'm going to say 0-0. And I don't know if
are you taking the piss out of Werner here, mate, or what's the situation?
I don't know if it's wishful thinking or what, but I'm thinking this is Big Sam's stage of the season where he starts to grind points out here and there, and he's going to try everything he can to keep West Brom up, and whether it'll work or not, who knows. But that early kickoff just after an international break, Chelsea. Their defence is very good, but they've not been too great in front of goal under Thomas Tuchel. They've obviously got a Champions League game coming up too. I think they're going to be frustrated, and we saw them before the international break against Leeds in the early kickoff where they didn't look great. Of course, Leeds are a lot better than West Brom on paper, but I just fancy West Brom to get something out of that game. And I looked at that as the first fixture of the weekend and thought it should be easy, us saying that it's going to be a big score to Chelsea or whatever. But no, I fancy West Brom getting something from that.
I've gone completely the other way. I've gone what you were saying at the end. I've gone 3-0 Chelsea in this game for me. I think a lot of Chelsea players want to prove themselves because Thomas Tuchel's come in and, the likes of Christian Pulisic hasn't seen as much game time as he'd wanted. And we've seen Hudson-Odoi playing as almost a wing back on that right-hand side for them as well. So, it is a difficult one. The first game back after an international break, the early kickoff, you don't want it if you're a fan. You don't want to be involved in that game. You don't want to see your team there. So I'll go 3-0, but, we'll see what happens. Another interesting game, Leeds against Sheffield United. Obviously, Chris Wilder departed, and Leeds have been in a bit of a mixed bag as well. But what do you think of this one?
I'm thinking 2-1 to Leeds. It's going to be an interesting game. As you say, since Sheffield United have lost Chris Wilder, they got battered by Leicester. I thought they looked a lot better in their last performance before the international break. But, they're still probably one of the worst. Well, they still are one of the worst sides in the Premier League right now. And, they're not looking great. They're in a bad position and they're preparing for life in the Championship. Leeds, on the other hand, after this game, they've got 3 very tough fixtures. I believe they're playing City, United and ourselves. So, they'll want to come back from this international break and get 3 points in the bag before, that run of 3 very tough fixtures for them.
It's not often I say this or have said this since we've started this, but I've gone for exactly the same scoreline as yourself, a 2-1 victory for Leeds. And I have a soft spot for Leeds, and I don't know if it's because themselves and United also have that massive rivalry, but I like Marcelo Bielsa. I like the way Leeds play a game of football that's easy to watch on the eye as a neutral. Now, often as a fan of Leeds, I'm sure with some of the goals they can see to probably drive them mad, but it's great to have them back in the Premier League anyway. I think we both agree on that.
Yeah, absolutely. They're a huge club, Leeds United, and they were down in the Championship for far too long. They tried different styles, they tried different managers, and it just didn't work. But they made a bold move, bringing Bielsa over, who, in my opinion, is an outstanding coach. And he's completely changed their style. He brought in some, crazy things to the club and the training ground that worked. And they're back in the Premier League, and they deserve to be in the Premier League. And they play
like lads hiding in bushes at Derby. and stuff, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But it's worked for them, and they're a club now that deserve to remain in the Premier League. And you've seen they've come up this year. Their position in the Premier League has never been doubted. And what's always harder for a club coming up is that second season. But Leeds have the perfect foundations to build something brilliant. And Bielsa, I expect him to stay for at least another year. Try and there'll be players, there'll be teams after players like Rafinha and stuff like that who have had brilliant first seasons in the Premier League. But it'll be interesting to see how Leeds rebuild it if Rafinha goes. Who would they look to bring in instead? The likes of Jack Harrison. Will they sign him permanently from Manchester City? The next few steps for Leeds United are very interesting and very excited for their fans, in my opinion.
Completely agree. Next game up, one of the big ones of the weekend, Leicester against Manchester City. And of course, we had the announcement during the week that Sergio Aguero will be leaving Manchester City at the end of the season. And look, no matter who you support, you've got to recognise greatness when you see it. And he is top quality, mate. And to have lost himself, David Silva and Vincent Kompany over the past few seasons, that's some big players there, some huge players in the Premier League era, and all getting statues outside the Etihad as well. And look, you just have to say he is quality.
Yeah, they've lost all their players now, haven't they? From when they first started their rebuild, when they spent a load of cash on certain players, and Aguero was one that really worked for them. Their top scorer. An outstanding player, an outstanding servant to the Premier League, and one who I believe, though is very rated by most football fans, he's underrated when you think about it, because I don't believe he's ever won Premier League Player of the Year, despite consistently getting over 20 goals a season. He is a real outstanding player, and he's been class in the Premier League. And I said the other day to you, I believe it would be interesting to see if there's a sneaky bit of interest from ourselves, because we know he's a proven goal scorer in the Premier League. His injury history and the wage he'll be on does worry me, and I think due to him being such a good servant for Manchester City, he probably won't want to go to another Premier League club out of a mark of respect. But he's a player that you can't doubt his ability in front of goal, and he's a class striker. And for me, it'll be sad, I'm sure, for Manchester City fans to see him go.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did see actually Mikel Arteta rule out the possibility of Arsenal going in for Aguero as well. But looking ahead to the game, what's your predicted score for Leicester against City?
Leicester City, I'm going to go with 3-1 to Manchester City. I expect City in the next couple of weeks to get that title wrapped up. Leicester have been strong, and I think this loss will maybe force something out of them to make sure that they can, fight for that top 4 spot at the end of the season.
I've gone a little bit different. You went for a bit of a shock result with the first game of the weekend. For me, in this one, I've gone for a 1-1 draw. I think Leicester are in a good way. I know they're missing a lot of players, but I think they're starting to believe in themselves. And again, Manchester City will have one eye on the trophy that they want to win most of all. Nobody will deny they're going to win the Premier League. It's a matter of if and not when. And I think they'll have one eye on the Borussia Dortmund game coming up as well. So I'm going for shock on this one. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. And
to be fair, though, Craig, I don't think a 1-1 draw would be much of a shock. I think the way Leicester have been performing, the way, how well drilled they are under Brendan Rodgers. They beat City, obviously, earlier on in the season. They're a very, very good side. And for me, they've broken into that, traditional top 6 now. I see Leicester as more of a top 6 club than Arsenal these days. I expect them to be constantly pushing for that top 4, when Arsenal, they're so hit and miss, you never know. So, for me, I don't see a 1-1 draw as a shock result, but I do think City are strong and have been strong this season, and will want to start life after that last international break with 3 points on the board. And I think that's what they'll do ahead of Dortmund on Tuesday.
Big game coming up on Saturday night then. Liverpool travelling obviously down to London to the Emirates to take on Arsenal. Look, we can't talk about this game without mentioning the very sad passing of Claude during the week. We covered it on Anfield Agenda. I don't think you've had a chance to speak about Claude yet, but he is, to use a term, an OG of fan content. He is somebody that I've had the pleasure of speaking with, somebody who I think has made many of us smile over the years, and it's a terrible loss to the sport.
Yeah, mate, I didn't have, too many instances where me and Claude met. Like, I never met him in person or anything like that. But speaking to him via social media, he seemed like such a lovely person. And, I was saddened to wake up to that news the other day. I'd been in contact with him over the last week. He was offering to help me out with my university work and stuff like that. And he just seemed like a top bloke, and a bloke that I would have been very lucky to meet, and I hope one day that I would. But it just shows, the negatives of social media. He got a lot of stick on social media, and we don't know the circumstances surrounding all of that. But yeah, all my love is sent to his family and friends, because it was horrible news the other morning.
What we can confirm, his daughter did put out a post to just say that it was natural causes that he passed away from. It doesn't make the grief any less, but like yourself, I was lucky enough actually to speak with Claude on a few occasions, and he always had a soft spot for Liverpool. He never forgot the way the Kop and Anfield applauded off the Arsenal team that beat us 2-0 to win the first division title. And he was just a class act through and through, mate. He really was. And it was great to see Arsenal recognise Claude's passing as well on their social media accounts. And, it's a massive loss, not just to the Arsenal fan base, mate, but to the world. And it's sad that we've seen the outpouring of love for Claude after his passing, because, he was... I like to say OG, because that's the way I say, but he was one of the originals, mate. He really was.
That's the thing, I thought, as soon as you see all those lovely messages on social media, how many times would Claude have loved to see things like that, while he was still here? And it's all well and good, all the things after his passing and stuff, but I just wish people were more proactive and more nicer to people while they were still here. But yeah, I know through conversations he'd been ill in the past few months, and I was just so shocked and so saddened to see him obviously pass away the other day. And as I say, well, this video, everything is dedicated to him. And part of me, though, I want us to absolutely humiliate Arsenal at the weekend if they are to do the job over Liverpool. That'll be for Claude.
Yeah, it is terribly sad news, and I'm sure that he'll be remembered in the right way. I'm sure the fan media will get together and do something special there. But looking ahead to the game, always a tricky one, traveling down to the Emirates. Always a game I actually enjoy and look forward to when the fixtures come out. But what are your predictions on this one?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because both teams have been hit and miss. You've seen from Arsenal over the last couple of weeks that, well, before the international break, they beat Tottenham in the North London derby, where I thought they were outstanding. I was really, really impressed with them that day. I did that game on Mundo Sporto. Tottenham were poor, but Arsenal, I thought, were brilliant, and the game was in their hands throughout. I think then they went to West Ham. It was a poor first half performance from them. Defensively, a shambles, absolutely shambolic, as we've seen so often from Arsenal. West Ham fired themselves 3-0 up, but they fought back and showed spirit and character that they've not done often over the years. But our record in the league against Arsenal over the past few games is pretty good. Arsenal have won just one game in the last 11 Premier League games against Liverpool. They've won 1, drawn 4, and lost 6. So I fancy Liverpool. I do, and I think that's purely because I'm a Liverpool fan, and I'm optimistic. I think 3 points would be huge ahead of that Real Madrid game, but it's not going to be an easy game whatsoever. It's going to be a tough task to get through Arsenal. We don't know which Arsenal team will turn up.
We don't know which Liverpool team will turn up either. That's the unfortunate part.
But for me, I'm going to go with 2-1, Craig, to the Reds.
Again, I echo that scoreline completely, mate. I think maybe it's wishful thinking on our part because we're Liverpool fans and we're never going to back us to lose. But it is genuinely one of them games that's tough to call because we don't know which one of either team will turn up.
Do you know what it is as well, Craig? It's the fact that, I think as a Liverpool fan, that boost going into Real Madrid, going to Madrid, with the fact that we've won off the back of an international break and, we'd started to pick up our form before the international break, I think it would give us all a huge boost. We've all spoken about how that draw has favoured us. We're still in with a shout for the top 4. And, to come back from an international break and lose our first game back, I think will be a big kick in the teeth to the players, the staff, and to us as supporters. So I think, as you say, it's wishful thinking, and we're all hopeful that we start back from the international break with 3 points.
Moving on to Sunday, then it kicks off with Southampton against Burnley. I do like watching Southampton play. I'd be lying to you if I said I like watching Burnley play football. But I'm gonna take the Sunday games first, actually. So I'll give you my prediction on this one. This to me bangs of a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. I think Southampton will just edge it 1-0. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Southampton now because, of course, they've not really got anything to play for as far as the league is concerned. They're not going to go down. They're not in the race for Europe. You know, they're going to finish mid-table. But they're in that FA Cup semi-final where they'll play Leicester. They've got a good chance of getting through to the FA Cup final. And that will be their main aim this season now, getting as far as they can in the FA Cup. But I do think they'll beat Burnley at the weekend. Burnley themselves aren't safe. But I can't see them winning this. I think 1-0 Southampton.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I could really think about maybe that might just drive them on is the likes of Ward-Prowse and Ings maybe trying to force their way into Southgate's thinking maybe, for the Euros coming up in the summer. So maybe a couple of players at Southampton for that. Next game is Newcastle against Spurs. And look, Steve Bruce under all kinds of pressure. I think there was a poll or something that came out that suggested 95% of Newcastle's fans wanted Steve Bruce to get the axe. Now, is it Steve Bruce? Is it a mixture of Steve Bruce and the owner? What do you think, as well as the score? Which, by the way, I'm going to go for a 2-0 win for Spurs. Sorry, I did say I'll do the Sunday ones. What are your thoughts on Newcastle at the moment? Is there anything to speak up for Steve Bruce?
They're an absolute mess, mate. It's from top to bottom. That club is an absolute shambles, and their fans do deserve better. They've got an incredible fan base. They've got a really good stadium right in the city centre. And they deserve better than what they've got. Mike Ashley is an absolute joke to football, in my opinion. Every single summer he seems to drive the whole he's selling up the story, and though the one last summer seemed to have more legs, look what happened to that. And it's only last summer that they were talking about Pochettino coming in to manage them, Kylian Mbappe as a potential signing that they'd be interested in with the money that they were meant to have in from that Amanda Staveley takeover. But it fell to nothing, and it looks like in the space of a year they'll have gone from talking about people like Pochettino and Mbappe to preparing for life in the Championship, because I think Steve Bruce is a poor manager. He's not a Premier League worthy manager, and he's batting above his average with Newcastle, and I think he's going to send them down, because if you look at their next few fixtures, they're really going to struggle to get much points from the next five or six fixtures. They really, really are. So, for me, I think they'll get beat 3-0 by Spurs at the weekend. I think Harry Kane will score a hat-trick. I think Steve Bruce won't have long left as manager of Newcastle United.
Hopefully he doesn't score a hat-trick, because he is level on goals with Mo Salah at the minute at the top of the goal-scoring charts. And thinking about Amanda Staveley, actually, wasn't she involved in that Dubai Investment Capital potential takeover Liverpool at one point as well? So that's 2 attempts I think she's been involved in to try and take over a Premier League club.
She's been in a few with Newcastle as well. I think 3 times in the last 3 years she's been linked with trying to buy it through a different consortium, and obviously this one, I think it was with a big Saudi-based company, wasn't it? Which is why the Premier League have gone against it. I don't know the ins and outs, but yeah, it's interesting. But I wouldn't like to be a Newcastle fan, because it's just I can imagine it would be awful.
I'm like you, I have a lot of time for the Geordies. I think they're a great fan base and they deserve better. So I echo everything you said earlier on. And the next one up, Jack, Aston Villa against Fulham. As we've always said, Scott Parker has got Fulham playing a lot better. I just don't think he has the personnel for the Premier League. I think as a manager, if they go back down, I think they might come straight back up, because I think he's got what it takes. I do like the cut of his jib, for want of a better phrase. But that being said, I'm going to go for a 2-0 Aston Villa win in this one.
Yeah, I hope if Fulham go down, they don't get rid of Scott Parker. I think he's a very good manager, and like you said, the personnel this season has let them down. I wonder if, when they came up and spent all that money that they did the first time, if Parker had been able to spend that money, where would he have got them to? But they went down, they've come back up with Scott Parker. He got them up through the playoffs. They've been decent this season. They, on paper, in my opinion, one of the worst sides in the league, and I think a lot of people had them to go down this season in bottom. But they're in with an outside chance of staying up, and as I say, I do expect them to stay up and Newcastle to go down. So for me, I think they'll get a point out of Aston Villa at the weekend. I think it'll be 1-1.
The last game on Sunday night, or Sunday evening, I should say, is Manchester United at home to Brighton. For me, look, I know United do have a quarterfinal of the Europa League, and I know that some players in international duty, and Martial is out with injury and stuff, or maybe he's getting completely ruled out, I'm not sure, but I can't see anything other than a Manchester United win, because I think the way Graham Potter plays football will play into the counter-attacking skill and pace that Manchester United have. So I'm going for a 3-1 United win.
Yeah, Brighton, really good side. A side I really like, in terms of their style, the footballing style that they play. Big fan. I really like Graham Potter as a coach. I think he's one of the best coaches that, in England, as far as a British manager that is. But I think for him, they really lack a goal scorer. They had a big win before the international break against Newcastle, which was, huge in magnitude for the relegation battle. But they'll, hope to stay up and have one eye on the transfer window and what kind of goal scoring striker they can bring in, because that's what's let them down this year. Like you say, I am the nard with a possible shock in this one. Brighton are a side very much capable of that, if they can just put the ball in the back of the net on the day. But I do think United will be just too strong for them, and I'm saying 2-1 to Manchester United.
Moving on to Monday, and I'll switch back over and let you. I'll first go with the scores. The early evening kickoff on Monday sees Carlo Ancelotti's Everton taking on Crystal Palace. Everton doing really well. I've got to give credit where it's due. Ancelotti has completely transformed them. They are in the race for European places. And what are you thinking about this game?
Carlo Ancelotti is a very, very good manager, and he's taken Everton in the right direction. And they did really well this season, not only with their league position so far, but they beat Liverpool at Anfield, which has been something that has been years in the making for them.
And look, they deservedly beat us, mate, as well. Yeah. There was no excuses from us. They were the better team on the day.
Absolutely, and we've come to a point in the season where there's 9 games left. They're still very much in the shout for top 4, and this is a big game, a big game for them. And I think they'll win. I think they'll narrowly win, but I think it'll be a 1-0 win to Everton.
I've gone a little bit broader. I've gone for 2-0, but yeah, I agree with you. I think it should be a straightforward enough home win. Palace are a bit of an odd team, though, aren't they? Sometimes they pull out these weird results out of nowhere that you don't expect, but I do agree with you. I think Ancelotti will have them set up and ready to go, and they know they've got a good chance this season, Everton, at a European spot.
Yeah, this is the sort of game, to be fair, where Palace usually turn up. But I think, we're getting to that stage of the season again where Palace aren't going to be relegated. They're in that sort of mid-table thing. They've not got too much to play for. The only thing they've probably got to play for is it gets to this sort of stage in the season where Zaha starts getting loud and wanting to move, isn't it? So, it'll be interesting to see which Palace turns up. But I think Everton will be just too strong for them.
And the last game of this round of fixtures is Wolves against West Ham, which is a good game on Monday night, mate, and one that I'm going to try to get you to cover for the channel. But it's certainly a cracking game, and I'm going to hand over to you. I'm predicting goals. I won't say what yet, but what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm going with 0-0, mate. I honestly think it'll be 0-0 in this one. And you know what? If I cover it on Mundo Sporto, it's guaranteed to be 0-0. But yeah, it's one of them. Wolves struggled to put the ball in the back of the net. West Ham, similar to Wolves in the fact that they're a very, very well-run side. The difference between West Ham and Wolves this season have been that West Ham have had goals, and they've had some incredible signings come in. They've improved on their defence. Their fullbacks have really worked for them, and Moyes has got a style that really suits the personnel at West Ham. I think West Ham may edge it 1 or 2-0, but for me, I think 0-0.
I've gone for 2-2. I think this will be Desmond. I don't know why, because usually I look at a Wolves game and I predict a low-scoring game, but I have a feeling there could be goals in this one. I don't know why, but maybe I'm just being optimistic. But I'm going to go for a 2-2, and that pretty much rounds up this weekend's fixtures, Jack. A lot of European games coming up during the week, which, of course, I think you're going to be doing the Bayern Munich PSG game, which, by the way, Lewandowski's been ruled out of. Yeah,
well, you called before, didn't you, the PSG going through, and now it looks more likely for PSG. They'll see that news about Lewandowski, and they'll raise an eyebrow to that, because he's a focal point for that incredible Bayern Munich side, and it'll be a big loss for them, that's for sure.
Look, folks, that brings us to an end of the Premier League predictions. We would, of course, love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to drop a like on the video, and most importantly, hit that subscribe button and make sure the notifications are turned on, because we've lots of interesting content coming up here on Mundo Sporto over the next weeks and months. Many thanks to Jack Gill for joining me, and you guys for watching. We'll be back soon. Take care.